Am I wrong for breaking up with my girlfriend because she changed her looks to resemble my dead wife? I, 35 male, was married to Laura for 7 years. We have a son who is 10 now. She was the light of my life. When we were both 28, we found out she had a rare form of cancer. She passed away 5 months later. This crushed me, and I was left drowning in my grief for a long time afterwards. My son and I have been attending therapy weekly ever since. It's been tough, but I feel like we've made a lot of progress. I didn't feel up to another relationship for a while. I filled my time with hobbies, friends, and spending time with my son and family. Then, a little over a year ago, I met Kayla, 33 female, at a work event. We share a hobby that's pretty niche where I live, so we had a great time chatting about it. Eventually, we began to go out together. She's great, but different from my wife. I love her for who she is as an individual. I was hesitant at first, but after speaking with my therapist, I decided to try for a committed relationship if we took it slow. At first, she was amazing. I told her about my past and that my son comes first even before our first official date. She was very compassionate and understanding about everything. After a few months of smooth sailing, I decided to introduce her to my son, and they got along great as well. For the first time after Laura's death, I could start to see a possible future with someone else. Everything started to go downhill around 4 months ago. She seemed to be a bit more distant than usual, so I sat down with her one night to ask her what was wrong. She teared up a bit and confessed that she felt like I had been neglecting her lately. She said that she feels like I'm using her as some replacement for my dead wife. This came as a total shock. A part of me will always love Laura, but I didn't feel like I was ignoring Kayla or anything. I asked for some specific examples, but she didn't say much afterwards. I felt guilty that I made her upset, so I ended up apologizing and arranged for us to have a few more date nights, and she seemed happy again. Then, a couple of weeks later, she had to go to a cousin's wedding. I couldn't attend because of work, but she was only gone for a day. When she got back, I asked for some pictures, but she just said that there hadn't been any of her. I thought it was a bit strange, but didn't pry. Then the next day, a coworker of mine showed me one off of a private page on Facebook. I was a bit shocked to see an expensive pair of my wife's earrings on Kayla. In my son's room, there was a small cupboard with pictures of him and his mom, letters from her, and some of her prized jewelry. I checked it as soon as I came home, and the earrings were returned to the cupboard, but in a different spot. I confronted her and she got mad, yelling at me for assuming she'd be so careless as to lose or damage the earrings. I told her I was just hurt she'd go behind my back and take something with sentimental value, even if they were beautiful. She eventually broke down and apologized, and after a serious talk about boundaries, we moved on. Things improved for a while before her strange behavior started. It began with her changing her hair color to match my wife's. My wife had naturally light blonde hair that a lot of women dye their hair to today, so while I thought it was strange, I wrote it off as a beauty choice. Then she began regularly straightening her hair. She has wavy hair and my wife's hair was pinned straight. She also started to change her clothes to be more like my wife's. She also had her ears double pierced and got a cartilage piercing like my wife. This was all incredibly unnerving, but she just said I was crazy. I'd asked my family and they said I was nuts too, so I ignored it. Then she brought up having my son call her mama. I said I wasn't a huge fan of the idea, but if my son wanted it, I suppose it'd be fine. She went on a whole rant about how it was different because he called his wife mommy, so it's not like she's stealing a title. He said no, and she was a bit cold to both of us for days. She seemed like a totally different woman than the one I fell in love with. Everyone around me just said I was probably nervous since it's my first relationship after Laura's death. The final straw was when she got a tattoo that was almost the exact same as my wife's. It was in the same spot, same color, just with a slightly different design. That was my final straw. I sat her down and confronted her a week ago with everything. At first, she denied it, but then broke down into tears and said I never loved her. She said she felt that she had to live up to the memory of a ghost. This upset me because I had asked her before what I did specifically and she wouldn't discuss it. Plus, she was the only one being weird and copying Laura. She kept sobbing and saying I didn't love her. I got so sick of it, I yelled at her saying that if she felt so unloved, we should break up. I honestly do like her, but I've seen how miserable she has been lately, and I don't think this relationship is good for her mental health. She got dead silent and just left and drove away. I was just so tired of everything. Later that night, she tried to commit suicide with pills and barely survived. She has no living family, so I was listed as her emergency contact. She wrote a long letter to me saying she loves me so much, but obviously I don't feel the same, and that maybe if she was dead too, I love her even a fraction of how much I loved my dead wife. Oh my god, that was a wild sentence. I'm distraught over this. She's been so strange lately, but before all of this, I really did love her. My mom and siblings kept on saying that I'm awful for pushing her to this point, and that instead of ending it, I should have doubled down in reassuring my love for her. They all got along great with her and had been hinting that they wanted us to get married so my son would have a mother again and possibly some siblings. I didn't think I was the asshole, but my whole family is being cold to me and I have no idea what to do. They're saying I should go revisit as soon as possible and support her with this to rekindle our relationship. I'm not sure if I want to do that. She's so unhappy with me and seems obsessed over my dead wife. I keep on thinking over this and wondering if I should have reassured her of my love again or broken up with her in a more tactful way. So, am I the asshole? Girl, this woman is disturbed and they want you to marry her? No.
Am I the asshole for stalking my ex-boyfriend? Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. Send me your story times on Instagram so I can share them here. Everyone in my life thinks I'm crazy and obsessed with my ex-boyfriend. My ex and I actually started off as best friends. We met through mutual friends and I was not attracted to him at all. So when I say we were best friends, it was just best friends. After a year of getting really close to him, I noticed that he started changing. It really upset me because he was my best friend at the time. Anytime I needed to talk to somebody that I knew cared about me, I would call him. He actually came to replace my female best friend. At the time, I was dating a couple of guys and things were just very complicated and he gave me very, very good advice. Like I said, he started to change and I knew that something was wrong. My friend group loves Halloween. We were all planning to do something really fun and exciting, so everyone was coordinating their costumes. Of course, I had to ask my best friend if he wanted to coordinate with me. He suggested that we go as the Addams family and I was totally down. We were so invested in our costumes and everything was absolutely amazing. Halloween rolled around and we all went to a house party. This is when I noticed he was acting really strange. He started avoiding me throughout the party and I asked him what was wrong, and he'd had a couple of drinks, so he confessed that he had feelings for me. I was actually truly in shock. I never ever thought that he had feelings for me in that way. Honestly, I felt betrayed. Up until that point, I thought we were just friends. I'd been sharing very intimate details about my relationships with these guys. A couple of times I had also changed in front of him. And I only did all of this because I thought he had zero interest in me. But when he confessed that he was in love with me, I actually began to cry. He asked me why I was crying and I told him. He apologized and told me that he was in love with me from the moment he met me. I was extremely uncomfortable with this idea. I didn't speak to him for about 2 months. I definitely needed time to myself and to figure out if I even wanted to be his friend anymore. And I also wanted him to figure out if he was willing to be my friend. Because I can't be friends with somebody that I'm in love with, especially if they don't love me back. He finally reached out to me on my birthday and we all went out together. That night, something happened though. I saw him differently. Instead, I was seeing him more like a man, not as my bestie. I don't know how that happened, it just did. It's like I was seeing him in a new light and everything was changing. I asked him if he wanted to hang out and he said yes. We ended up hanging out at my place later that week. And I went for it. I gave him a kiss and he was actually super shocked. He thought that I was going to tell him that I didn't want to be his friend anymore. And as soon as I kissed him, he actually started to laugh. He told me that he always knew that I felt something for him, but that I just couldn't see it at the time. After that, our relationship escalated quickly. I mean, we moved in together 2 weeks later. My family thought we were going way too fast, but I was kind of ready for it. At that point, we've been best friends for a year. I knew him inside and out, and he knew me. A couple of months later, he proposed and I said yes. I was so in love and so infatuated. I knew that I wanted to spend the rest of my life with him. And then, of course, things started to change. I noticed he started getting a short temper. For example, if I did something that annoyed him, he would give me the silent treatment. And he began to get more and more annoyed of me. This progressed throughout weeks. And a couple of weeks before the wedding, he actually talked to me and told me that he was feeling different about it. He said he needed time to think about it, because as soon as we moved in, he started noticing things about me that he didn't like. Obviously, this was actually shocking to my system. I never, ever thought that he would say that. Honestly, there was so many things about him that annoyed me as soon as we moved in together too, but I just dealt with it. I knew that moving in with somebody would be difficult, but to him, it was like a realization that maybe he didn't want to be with me. But because I respect him, I gave him the space he needed. He ended up moving out, and after that, he ghosted me. This was even more shocking. This man was my constant. He was my rock, my best friend, the person I literally said everything to. I had zero secrets from him, and suddenly he was gone. Not only that, but he left me with all the rent. So I got stuck having to pay $2,600 in rent every single month. I was angry, but also super in love. Now, I don't want to say I became obsessed, but I couldn't stop thinking about him. I wanted to know where he was, what he was doing, who he was talking to. And this is when a friend told me that he was eating off of someone else's plate. In other words, he was cheating on me. me, or that at the very least he had fallen in love with somebody else, and that's why he left. I started going to his job and he would refuse to talk to me, and there was no way I could get in contact with him because he blocked me. Before I knew it, I started following him everywhere. I even got fired from my job because I was showing up late all the time. But I couldn't help myself. I wanted to know why he left me. And this is embarrassing to admit, but I started following him everywhere. This is when I saw that he was going on several dates with different women. Then I started stalking the girls that he was going on dates with. I mean, maybe stalking is too strong of a word. I followed them once or twice, but I mostly started following him around almost every day. I was finally able to corner him at his gym. He literally tried to run away. I had to put my car in front of his car so he wouldn't leave. I asked him why he ghosted me, and he said he just didn't want to deal with it. And I was so angry with him. How could he do that to me after he was the one that was in love first? And the way he left me with the rent and all the bills to pay? He told me he'd pay me for the rent if I left him alone. Later that day, he sent me about $10,000, which did help, but still, it's been months and I still follow him at least twice a week. And I think he has a new girlfriend. I've seen her, I found out where she lived, and I go to her place and he's sometimes there. Am I wrong for this?
Am I wrong for thinking she's cheating? I, 35 male, have been married to my wife, 32 female, for about 8 years. We've had our ups and downs like any couple, but the last year or so has been awful. For context, I work in a field that requires a lot of night and weekend work, plus a lot of travel. I also have a second job that takes up a couple nights a week. A few months ago, she flipped out on me because I had a work obligation on a Sunday that prevented me from doing something with her. She insinuated that I constantly choose work over her, and she doesn't feel loved or wanted. I told her I would try my best to cut back on extra work, but that the need for extra income was pretty high. Her response to that was to start sleeping in another room and stop wearing her wedding rings. A month or so later, I rearranged my work schedule to spend the evening with her one weekend. We went to see one of her work friends play in a band at a bar in town. For most of the night, she ignored me and hung out with her other work friends, other than when she wanted me to buy her a drink. We later went to another bar where I tried to be attentive and affectionate, but she mostly rejected me. The next night, there had been an event I had to work, but was meeting up with her and her friends afterwards. When I got there, she was smiling ear to ear, rubbing this work friend's arm. We'll call him Jay, and begging him to go back out to the bars with her. He reluctantly agreed. She then saw me. I asked where we were all going. Her response, I don't want you to come. Please don't come. I know you don't want to be there, and I don't want you there either. I went home, and she got in around 3 a.m. I didn't talk to her for a couple of days. Last weekend, she went out and got drunk with some of the same friends, although I tagged along this time once I got out of work. She passed out as soon as we got home. I went through her phone. Lots of texts to Jay about her feelings for him and referencing something that happened another night she went out with her friends while I had to work. To be fair, I don't know if Jay is as interested in her as she seems to be in him. Jay is also about 8 years younger than her. She leaves for work super early every morning, and she and Jay are usually the first two there. I can't help but think that the two of them starting to work together was the catalyst that started her poor treatment of me. It's been about 1.5 years since they started working together. It's also been at least that long since we had sex. There's been more incidents between us, but these were the most impactful. Now we're about to spend a week traveling together to see our families for Christmas. I hope I can keep it together the whole time, but it might be time to start planning my exit strategy when we get back.